Hi, in this video I'm going to give you a brief look at Photoshop Elements, just a quick overview of it to be honest, so that you can see how it works, and then you can also watch the video that I've recorded in the same way for Lightroom. Now just a quick word to say that the version of Photoshop Elements that I've got on here is quite an old one. It's 12, Photoshop Elements 12, and the latest version that you can buy I think is Photoshop 2019, Elements 2019. There may even be 2020 available by now. But anyway, this expert mode here that I'm in is pretty much the same across all of the versions, the most recent versions. So it's not really going to look too different. But if I go into these quick mode here, it does look quite different in the newer version. Then tried to make it much more user friendly. So you've got three different ways of using this. You've got quick, guided and expert. Quick is meant for anybody to be able to quickly sort red eye out, add text, do a bit of healing, cropping, smart fix exposure and things like that. So just a few easy ways of editing your image. And then you've got guided, where you will see that there's lots more tools, but again all pretty straightforward just to have a go at using. And the principal point here is that you're not using layers. Now the whole principle of Photoshop and Photoshop Elements, when they're used to their full power, is that it uses layers, and each layer is basically a change that you make to the image. So I'm going to click on Expert because this is where the layers do come into play. I'm going to quickly open an image for you. So we are File, Open, and off we go to find our train again, which is the image that I used in the previous, in the Lightroom overview as well. And what's happened now, and this is different to Lightroom, is that the image has opened up in Adobe Camera Raw. So this is where we make the changes to the raw image, whereas in Lightroom it just opens straight up into Lightroom, and you do your very similar looking adjustments here, but then you've got lots of other options as well, all on the same screen. Somebody once described this to me as being a bit like you're in the porch but you've not gone into the house. So Adobe Camera Raw is the porch, you stand in the porch, you do all of this stuff, and then you go into the house, which is Photoshop Elements. So it made me laugh and it stuck in my mind. So here we've got our histogram showing us that there's a lot of dark in the image. It's not overexposed. It does have a peak on the blue here. I think it's picking up the blue sky and some blues within the engine and stuff as well. But that's not wrong. It's just showing what is in the image. It's reflecting the image. Camera settings, and then we've got our sort of white balance settings. So we could have a look at what auto does. Very warm. We can have a look at daylight, which will go cooler, and we've got cloudy, which will go a bit warmer again. And we've also got over here, up on the top left, you've got a white balance tool where you need to click on anything that is white, black or mid-grey. So unlike Lightroom Classic, where you get to see that you've picked the colours that you're picking, you don't get to know that whether you've selected the right colour. You just get to kind of press it and see what happens to your image. So that's something that I like better about Lightroom straight off. It's just the way to colour pick, to more precisely know where you're putting this dropper. So anyway, I'm going to leave the white balance like that. And just as with Lightroom, this is where I would correct anything that's wrong about this image. So I'm going to leave exposure for a moment. I'm going to bring down the highlights and bring back some colour and detail into that sky, and rescue some of the detail where it was very, very white on here. It's not as easy to do before and after views here. Let me just have a look. No, that's just toggling full screen, which could be useful, and toggling between before and after. So that's not as good at all, as although I probably think that in the latest version of Photoshop Elements you probably can have two things up on the screen at once, but I'm not sure whether that's the case in this Adobe Camera Raw window. You may not be able to. Okay, so I've taken my highlights down, rescued stuff up here, adjusting it a little bit just so we don't lose quite so much of the smoke and stuff, and then I can take the shadows up and bring back a lot more detail in those shadows. Okay, same thing here where we've got white and black point, which I'm not going to mess about with, and again we've got clarity. You just see what was happening there as I was doing that. So it's just kind of making it, it's not sharpening, but it's giving it more definition. Vibrance and saturation, I'm quite happy with those. I don't think I really need to adjust those. Okay, now this triangle here is where our settings are for sharpening and our noise reduction. This luminance one is the main one that you will be changing. So nothing to change there because we've got ISO 200. Sharpening is already applied to 25. You could make it more. I can't remember what these do. I've googled them before now and generally found that, you know, these are okay where they are, so I generally leave them. And then this one is where you would be able to calibrate. I can't remember what all that is about, and you can change your camera profiles again. I've got a feeling you can probably do. No, you're just calibrating the image to recognise the version of Photoshop or the other elements or the other way around. Anyway, it doesn't matter, it's fine. But it hasn't got all of that kind of stuff to fix where you've got lens distortion and stuff. That's not here. Okay, so then you go and either, if you press done, it closes this image, doesn't open it in Elements. But it would remember what changes you made here. Okay, if you press cancel, dismiss without accepting any changes. Okay, and open image is going to open it in Photoshop Elements. So we've now gone into the house. Okay, over here is where we'll work with layers. Over here are our tools and just a normal menu bar like you'd have up along the top here. So the first thing you're normally supposed to do is create a duplicate layer so that you're not working on your original picture. So I've done that, and can you see now we've got 2 layers, okay? And if I want to create another layer where I might change the levels or the saturation or whatever, I've clicked on a little symbol here, I've gone to levels, and a little box pops up and it lets me start to change the tones within the image with these levels. Okay, so I'm lightening shadows, darkening stuff. Okay, so this can be quite a good way to give your image a bit more punch, and you know, just brighten the highlights and things like that. So, you know, if you feel like it wasn't completely refined when you did it in the previous stage, then you can do it here. Switch that off to go to before, switch it back on after. Same here, switch the eye off, switch the eye on. And so on, and you'd create lots of different layers with all your different changes on them. You could add text, for instance. You go over here and click text and it would create a layer for text. Not all of these tools here do create layers though, and I think some people find the whole thing about layers quite confusing. Okay, so really that's a personal preference, but that's the main difference between Photoshop and Lightroom, is that you don't work with layers. In Lightroom you do have your history of the changes that you've made. It would be over here on the left hand side. You know, that the way, and then there's lots and lots and lots more to this. There's all sorts of things that you can do that I'm not really going to touch on. Okay, I'll show you a few things. You've got red eye tool over here. You've got a way, this selection tool would let me pick, for instance, if I wanted to pick all this train out and select it, and then make some changes that adjust to the train or just to the sky and not the train. I could do all that sort of stuff. So for instance, I could make this black and white if I wanted to. So not the move tool, the selection tool, selection brush, you've got different ones down here. I could start to say, please, you see how it's automatically just started to select some areas then by me kind of just squiggling the brush over it. and I can do all of that stuff. Now, I'm not sure yet whether you can do this. I think you can in Lightroom, but I've not kind of worked on it yet. It started to select some areas I don't want, and I can remove those, subtract those areas and things like that. I'm not going to go into any detail there, so I'm just going to go select, deselect here and get off all of that. These selection tools, the newer versions that you buy of programs, are getting more and more powerful, more and more intuitive. The AI that's used to work out what you're trying to select is fantastic. So bear in mind that this version's 8 years out of date now. Crop tool. I don't think I get all of my overlays and things like that. Oh, I do, but just a few. Look, sorry, I'm talking rubbish as usual, aren't I? I've got my overlays down here. I'm not sure why they're not working. Not working at all, are they? Don't know. I've probably got something switched off so it doesn't show them. Okay, so then you can choose your crop. So, and I'm just going to fit all this back on screen again. For some reason it wasn't. And I could do my crop. I can straighten a little bit like we did in the Lightroom one. You know, get in the exact areas that I want. I just find Lightroom, I don't know if it's the novelty of it for me, but I just find it better for all of this sort of stuff as well. So there's my image cropped. And then what I'm going to show you now, quickly show you the healing tool. So we've got our healing brush over here, and in the same way I can go and click over there. And right, now that's not worked. The reason that's not worked is because I'm on the wrong layer, and this is where people do get a bit sort of impatient with elements. You know, it takes that bit more learning. So now that I've clicked on my base layer, not the original, but the kind of the main layer, I can go over here and now see that's gone now. Okay, so I've healed that out. There's a clone tool where I could do more difficult stuff. I could, for instance, take out the whole of that if I wanted to by copying black over that. So, you know, you've got the ability to do some much more sophisticated removal of stuff. I could remove this man. It would be pretty difficult because I'd have to try and find something. I'd probably end up having to take that window out as well. But, you know, that's the sort of stuff that you can do if you want to. But what I'm going to show you now is how I work with Photoshop Elements, because just like we had presets in Lightroom, you can buy actions in Photoshop Elements where you basically, it's very much like the presets. So to save me building up all these layers individually, I can buy sort of ones that people have already created. So I'm going to go down here and click on actions, and then I'm going to, these are all now actions down to here, they come free with elements. Here onwards I've bought all of these. So I am going to just show you one of the first ones that I bought, which was this one, and I'm just looking for something that says Recipe Maker. There we go. I'm going to click on that and let's have a look at what it does. So it tells me to play on a flattened, unedited background layer, okay, which I am doing there. And watch here now. See all these layers being created. I'm going to close that little box now that's in the way. Okay, and it's going to, so imagine how long it would take me to learn how to create all those layers, but B, do them individually. Okay, I'm going to explain what's going on in a moment with that. And again, move that one out of the way. You can do all this moving of panels and panes and things in Lightroom as well. So click continue. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And it has applied this overall kind of adjustment to the image. So I'm going to go down to what's called the kind of the control layer for the whole lot, classic color group. Okay, and if I want to, I click on that and go up to where it says opacity and reduce the intensity of that layer, because it was pretty intense, wasn't it? Okay, so reduced it right down to 41%. I was warned before I bought these that you don't use them at 100% because they are so fierce. Okay, so I take them down to around 40. It depends on every different one how far down I take it, the type of image, the action that I'm using. And then I can click down here on the eye and say before and after. Okay, and I can see kind of what I like or don't like about what this particular thing has done. So I quite often don't like the way that it's really bright in the shadows. So I would typically, I might go to the brighten shadows layer and take that down slightly as well. So you can reduce the individual layers as well if you want to. Okay. And then if you look up here, all of these are not visible. Okay, so they've not been applied. All of this has been applied and done. This hasn't been applied. So this then lets you play around with lots of different looks for this image. So here's an instant black and white. Turn that on. And I've got a black and white there, a very rich dark black and white actually, but I could work with that if I wanted to. I could then start to adapt it a little bit. So I'm going to switch that off. I could work with something called Vintage Wash. Okay, and again, I can change the opacity of that. So if I go up there, it's at 25%, I can reduce it. So just like you can do in Snapseed with certain things, I've got ones that I know are my favourites. Warm Colour Pop is one that I like working with. Again, I wouldn't use it at that strength. Ivory Boost I've used a lot on portraits and whiter, lighter images. You know, look at the difference in that. That's quite nice. It's also tinted it slightly brownish as well. But again, I would probably change the opacity of it. Okay. So I've got all of those, and I can go all the way up here. See, light and dark and rich autumn, sable, blue ginger, all of that sort of stuff. Okay. So I would choose which ones I want to change, choose which ones I want to use, and then I would click back on my base layer and I would flatten image back into one layer. If I don't do that, it's going to save it as a massive Photoshop file, whereas now it will save it as a JPEG. Okay, and I can do some other stuff if I want to. I can apply a vignette around the edges. Okay, so it's just darken the edges there if I do before and after. So that kind of helps a bit with getting the sky to go a little bit darker. I can choose a black. I'm just going to delete that layer because I don't really want it. I could have a look for a black and white action and apply that. So there's one I quite like. It's called High Key Black and White. I haven't used some of these for a while, so it takes me a while to work out where they are. High Key Black and White. Okay, it's just taking a little while to go. It might be running a bit slow. It's not too bad. Okay, so then I've got my high key black and white, and again, I can make some adjustments here if I want to. Okay, I could add a haze to the image and reduce the effect of that haze and change some of the things that are going on here. Okay, so and then if I want to get rid of all of that, I've got to actually delete all of these layers. Okay. So I'm not going to go on much more. I think that's probably enough for you to get a quick idea of, and again, it's only a quick overview. There's lots and lots more that this program can do. But that's the principle of it. You're creating layers and you've also got brushes, again, where I can brush on colour, brush off colour, deepen that deep blue sky up there if I want to, and all that sort of stuff. I could change the colour of the engine if I want, but again, I'm pretty sure you can do all of that sort of stuff in Lightroom as well. I just haven't got to it yet. So I'll show you the last bit, which is File, Save As. Because we've only got one layer, it is going to save it as a JPEG for me now, and I would typically save that in my JPEGs folder there and save. Okay, and it tells me that it's maximum quality. The highest is 12 and it's 11.3 megabytes, and that's that done. Okie dokie. So thanks for watching, and I hope that's been a good help for you, and please post any, ignore that, I don't know why it does that, it's nothing to do with Photoshop. let me know if you've got any questions in the comments and things like that. Thank you.